And now, Heritage Building Systems presents a virtual tour of one of our pre-engineered steel buildings. To help you visualize how these structures go together, we've animated a typical design. Now, let's look at this sequence in a little more detail. Before we start, though, we want to urge you to follow the safety and procedural guidelines of the Metal Building Manufacturers Association and the Federal Occupational Safety and Health Administration. Everyone involved in the erection should carefully read these OSHA and NBMA guidelines, and your project's foreman should be thoroughly familiar with them. A few days after you order a building from Heritage, you'll receive a set of drawings that detail all the parts of your building and how they fit together. It includes anchor bolt plans which give your local foundation engineer the necessary information to design a foundation. When erecting a metal building, the most important thing is to keep the structure plumb and level. Before erecting any steel, make sure the foundation and the anchor bolts are properly laid out. Measure the two diagonals of your slab. If it is square, the measurements will be equal. Check the distances between your anchor bolts. Don't measure from the edge of the slab to the bolt, measure from the center of each bolt, and compare your figures with those specified by your plans. If you spot any problems now, they can be easily corrected. After determining that your anchor bolts are properly placed, clean any concrete off the bolts. Before you attach columns to the bolts, make sure you have enough nuts and washers. Never leave a column standing with loose or missing nuts. Our sample building is 60 feet wide by 100 feet long and has 5 bays, but the same principles always apply. Working from the inside out, erect and secure one bay at a time. For a 2-bay building, erect the center frame and an end wall first. For a multi-bay building, like we show here, start with the middle bay. Stand the columns and use a 4-foot level to check them. If necessary, you can shim the columns to level them. If you plumb each connection as you make it, you will save yourself a lot of time and trouble later. As soon as you have all 4 columns of the center bay standing, install the sidewall girts at 7 feet 4 inches. Assemble the 2 rafters, making sure the connections are fully tightened. Raise the rafters, make the haunch connections, install the eave struts, the 2 peak purlins, and then the intermediate purlins. Finish framing this first bay. Tie it off with ropes and come-alongs to create temporary X-bracing, and then make sure it is plumb. If your building has more than 4 bays, install temporary bracing on every 5th bay. Leave this bracing in place until the walls are sheeted. Check your framing with a level each morning in case the wind has shifted it overnight. After erecting and plumbing a frame, install the flange bracing. Continue erecting bays in the same sequence: columns, 7-foot 4-inch girts, rafter frames, eave struts, purlins, and remaining wall girts. Until the walls are sheeted, the end wall frames can move from side to side. So brace both end walls to keep them plumb. With the end walls up, you can then install the base trim. Attach the base trim to the concrete on 2-foot centers. Use nail pins or sleeve anchors. Shoot-in anchors are not strong enough. To install building accessories like walk doors and windows, simply follow the instructions that come with these items. Before sheeting the walls, attach the jamb and header trim to the framed openings with pop rivets. Now it's time to do the walls. Prepare the sheets by pre-drilling holes for the stick screws and structural screws. Make a template by carefully drilling the holes in one sheet. With this guide, lay out stacks of up to 15 sheets, clamp them, and drill your holes. After drilling, wipe away all the metal shavings to prevent rust. Next, lay out the insulation and cut it into sections as described in the cut list. Finally, attach double-sided tape on the base trim and the eave struts. Start on the back wall so the crew gains experience before moving to more conspicuous parts of the building. Begin at a corner and install a section of insulation with the exposed fiberglass facing the outside of the building. Stretch the section tight over the eave strut and base trim using the double-sided tape and clamp pliers to hold it in place. Now for the most important part. Fiberglass insulation will soak up or wick any moisture it touches. You can prevent this by leaving no exposed fiberglass. After clamping a section, you should have 6 inches extra insulation at the top and bottom. Trim away the excess fiberglass, but leave the vinyl facing intact. Fold this excess vinyl back over the fiberglass to create a moisture barrier at the edge of your building. With a section of insulation in place, install a wall sheet using the self-drilling fasteners supplied with your building. The longer fasteners with smaller threads connect the panels to the frame. The shorter ones with larger threads are called stitch screws and connect panels to each other. Continue installing the insulation and wall sheeting according to the pattern in your drawings. Use your 4-foot level to check each piece of insulation and each wall sheet as you install it, making sure all are plumb. Next comes the roof. As always, safety is the most important thing, so wear masks and proper attire when installing fiberglass and follow approved procedures for working off the ground. Start by laying out the roof sheets and pre-drill for the stitch screws, but do not drill holes for the structural screws. Lay out and cut the insulation. Attach double-sided tape to the inside half of the top of the eave strut, leaving room on the outside half to place a closure strip. Stretch out a section of insulation, facing the tab in the direction you are sheeting, pulling it as tight as you can from side to side, and attaching it to the eave strut with the double-sided tape. As you did with the walls, cut off any excess fiberglass on the top of the eave and fold the vinyl facing back over the fiberglass. Install one run of insulation at a time, covering it with roof sheets as you go to keep wind from pulling up the insulation. You will seal each sheet with a closure strip, which will create a watertight barrier if properly installed. Use the mastic sealer tape to attach the bottom of the closure strip to the eave strut just outside the double-sided tape that holds the insulation. Run mastic sealer along the top of the closure strip so you can attach the roof sheet to it, but do not remove the protective paper strip from the mastic until you are ready to install the next sheet. As you seal roof sheets, do not allow insulation to be caught between them and the closure strip. To properly align the ridge cap or vents, you must install the sheets in a specific order, placing a sheet on one side of the peak, followed by one on the other side of the peak, and then the section of ridge cap that goes between them. On wider buildings or when installing skylights, the roof sheets will be in more than one piece, so install the sheet at the eave first and work uphill. Refer to your drawings for the screw placements and the amount of overhang at the eave. As you proceed down the roof, staple the tabs of your fiberglass insulation together. If you're using a radiant barrier foil, it has an adhesive tab on one edge. Simply pull the paper backing off the tab and attach the next sheet to it. After sheeting the roof, install the trim as described on your erection drawings. Use pop rivets to install the corner trim. If installing gutters, do not leave off any straps, and before you cut holes for the downspouts, be sure you aren't positioning them over a door or a window. At the end of each workday, sweep away any metal shavings caused by drilling or cutting and ensure decades of rust-free performance. Remember, a quality job comes from taking your time, using your level, and following safety rules at all times.